We're in an area, far end of a river stretch that we've been working on the last 2 years, going on 3 years. And we're in a pretty urban environment. You can see there's a lot of apartments over there. There's another one over there. That's a major street. That's right by that apartment over there. And everything around here is very dense. So this is a park and a kind of an urban suburban area. We're within 5 minutes of a major city of like almost 1 million people in this area within 10 miles. And yeah, we've been working in this area now. This is our second year. We haven't done much in here this year, but last year we did a substantial amount of work. We've got rid of all the seeding buckthorn that is in this area, at least this area. There's close by, we've got to deal with some more, but it's a nice long stretch. It goes down quite a bit down that river that we worked on last year. And one thing we did do, because we are volunteers, we don't have a whole lot of time, is that we decapitated trees. You can see what happens after a year. This was probably done about 11 months ago. And when we were looking at them last year, they really didn't rejuvenate much last year. They kind of hung on. They weren't doing much, but come spring and get tapped in that water, they've come back. This is something we're going to do this week. We'll get rid of those. Most of them we've got taken care of. But this whole area was just smothered with buckthorn. There's like one that's almost dead. We just got to cut a little bit off. Another one there that just died by decapitating it. And what happened here is we didn't have a whole lot of time to address this area, considering the density of this area. So in some cases, particularly some of the larger ones, we just cut them down. We know that nothing seeded here last year, or at least right now, nothing's going to seed this year. Last year, some of the seeds were starting to form, but they weren't quite mature, so we're hoping that, they didn't do much. So the seed bank's starting to get exhausted in here, but quite a few in here. And what's happening, you can see there's some currents down here, some other native structure that's starting to fill in. Some of these areas, like right there, that was just carpeted, because this was just a canopy. These are some pretty big buckthorn. So they're gone right now as far as the seed threat. And the canopy thread allowed light to get down in there and start filling it out. And we're going to take those out next week. We just didn't have time to deal with them. And you can see some of the debris that we laid off along the side. We've really spread this debris out over a long area along that hillside. Woodbine's really coming through. That's one thing that happens. They're natives, but certain things are just somewhat aggressive. But this does have a variety of things that are popping up in here. And there's a nannyberry that really just opened up. It's got berries on it. So this area is pretty diverse for public lands around here. It's a hit and miss in some areas. It really depends on what was done previously. This area had been worked on about 10 years ago, so we did have some to work with. There was some regeneration, but it wasn't a very thorough job as far as just getting rid of everything and just monitoring. And that's kind of where we're at right now. We're gonna start getting rid of like these little buckthorns there. They're very small. So we'll come through here, and when we're addressing these other larger ones, we'll start cutting some of the smaller ones out. And for the most part, we should be able to get rid of most of the buckthorn that's in here. And we're hoping that canopy opening up will start creating some density in here. Then they've got to compete with the natives here, and that's real helpful to us. Unfortunately, there are a lot of herbaceous. I mean, there's right there you have lily of the valley. There's quite a bit over here. We're just determining how to deal with that. The best way would be just to weed whack it repeatedly over time, and hopefully things would choke it out and it would give it up. I'm not talking like yearly, just keep weed whacking it. I mean, you could spray it, but I think just weed whacking it will really lessen the population, but that's a secondary thing. And this is an area, you can see how open up it was. The sight lines were not there before. Right there, you wouldn't have seen past those trees at all. Even in this area right here, we cleaned this up and got quite a bit of stuff out of here, and now it's opened it up completely. And the one thing about this area, for quite some distance in that direction, there's nothing that's setting seed this year. And that's our whole goal in a lot of things, to take back the canopy, stop the seed production. Perhaps if you find some populations of native plants, you nurture them a little bit to get them established. They don't have to compete so so hard with the other natives or the other structure, because there's a lot of things that are very prevalent in this area, and they don't need any protection. But occasionally you'll find small populations. You really kind of want to protect those and kind of establish those and try to get them to spread a little bit. But this was a war zone. This is what we call a war zone. Is a lot of times there was just so much stuff that we were just killing things and dropping it, just murdering it. It would drop, murder, drop, and then it got to the point where we couldn't access anything, so we started stacking to a certain point. We don't do a lot of stacking. If you can chop and drop, it's the only reason you would go is access, or it's going to be smothering plants quite a bit. So that would be the only reason you would stack it. You would just find a place that you could, stack it, and hopefully things would grow through it. But as much as possible, just drop it and chop it, drop it, and leave it. Just make sure it doesn't come back. And there's different ways to approach that. And you can see, like through here, how the density of this area was quite substantial. And you can see how choked out the ground is over in this area. And again, a lot of these areas, we do this approach if we don't have a whole lot of time. We'll come back like later. Sometimes we'll come back a couple weeks later. Sometimes it has to be next year, but we'll come back and deal with all these. But by doing this whole canopy was taken back. So right now the native structure underneath can be developed just naturally. And there's a few things that are popping up in here. We've been pretty dry here, so not much is growing here. We've been in a drought situation. We just had a rain, and I think there's little are helping to pop up. But any kind of seed banks that these buckthorns may have had, or other seed banks from natives is not showing up yet. That's something to be determined. But there's another view of it. And as I was saying, you can see how choked out it was. These things were big. There's one right there, that buckthorn. It's about 3 inches in diameter. These are not like original buckthorns. Those big ones were cut down in here years ago, which is a real plus for us. However, with them not following up after 10 years, nobody coming through here, it was problematic at best. So right here, we decapitated these. As they can't produce seed. They can't take back the sun. They can't control the sun from hitting the ground where the natives can start filling in. And there's like quite a few of them. So we'll come through and cut all those down. But some of these were seeding buckthorn. And the main thing with us is like, there is no seed here. That's really the goal. And that was accomplished. And so like, here's another monster right there. You can see the green, the big buckthorn that was just decapitated. It was huge. I mean, 6, 7, 8 feet diameter, even competing with other things, even more. It looked like it was a multi-stem. It had cut it years ago and it just suckered up. But we'll make sure that doesn't happen. And there's a few other big stems in there, and we'll get rid of those. But you start getting some other natives that are coming in here and taking its place. So this is at a stage, once we cut those down, this is at a stage that we can monitor this. Anything that pops up, we can just kind of slowly and methodically make sure it doesn't get established again. But right now we're in a situation where all this open space, hopefully we're filling quickly with native structure, because this is a prime area for any kind of invasive, herbaceous invasive. They come in here, they'll really take over. But that's one thing we'll monitor, that anything that pops up. In this area we did pull the garlic mustard and the Dame's rocket that was in here, which wasn't really that bad, because there's two factors. The canopy, the Dame's rocket didn't like that kind of shade. Garlic mustard didn't either. And a lot of times there were some areas that were really pretty well covered on the ground level that had choked out a lot of the garlic mustard seedlings. There were a few popping up. There were some big ones, but we pulled those and let them seed. So that's something we did take care of, and we'll continue to do so. And that's one right there. I can't even tell if that's a female. We have to go through here right now. We didn't do anything in this area. We're working in other areas, but right now we're going to be focusing going into July on a lot of these little buckthorn decapitations, because right now they're coming out of their emergency room. They were seriously hurt, and now they're coming out of the hospital. It's time to finish them off. I mean, there are a lot of the smaller ones we were able to deal with, and they're not coming back at all. So you can see the stumps that are in here that we did take care of, but it was just so much stuff in here that we had to just kind of take the best shot at it. We dealt with these pretty quickly, but on the way out we just chop, and then later we did pick up the dead tops. But in a quick amount of time we were able to at least set this back to the point where it's not going to be a problem anymore. And this is not something that I recommend. If you're not going to come back and deal with this, do not do it. I mean, you could, it's going to be beneficial. You're better off to top it like that than to go all the way to the bottom, because you're going to have more of the growth on top and not suckering from the bottom. But regardless, it's like, if you're not going to come back, don't do this. You're not serious about taking care of it either anyway. So just cut them as much as you can and kill what you can and leave the other ones. But this is a very effective approach, at least for us, to take back a lot of time, or what should I say, the time obviously because we're volunteers, but at the same time take back a lot of the canopy, stop the seed production, and start the seed bed exhaustion, which is going to be a few years of heavy flushes. First few years is when you really have to kind of be active looking for that and taking care of it. After the third, fourth year, the flushes become less and less. However, this is one area we're going to work on a little bit next week or two. We'll have 5-6 people come through here for an hour, and we'll address everything we need to address, because it's not that much work. It's just, everybody just takes care of these buckthorns and maybe a few of the honeysuckles that are sprouted up that we did the same thing to. Most of them are dead, but there's a few that are popping up. At that point, we can walk away and come back in the fall or in the spring of next year and just make a quick pass and constantly improve the area. So it's a victory. That's a lot less work. We spent a lot of time in here last year. This year, we might spend a couple hours, whereas last year we might have spent, a group like 10, 12 hours over a period of 12 weeks, an hour a week. So there's progress being made, but we have a lot more work to do.